Dave knows how.
And welcome back to my channel. In this video, we're going to go over, or try to go over, the electrical diagram for the control circuits of our third function valve. And when I started to wire this control valve electrically, I originally was going to use two relays. A very simple design to turn each relay on with one switch at the control lever for the loader. After talking to a friend of mine who owns a machine company, uh, JR, um, bouncing ideas back and forth in conversation, he brought up something that was I really didn't have an answer to. What would happen if you press both buttons at the same time and the valve opened in both directions, or would it open in both directions? And what would be um, any issues that might arise? On a conventional uh, control switch, like what you'd get from WR Long, it has a toggle type switch, so there's no way that you can turn, there's no way you can press both switches at the same time. It's a toggle switch, spring loaded, that returns to center, and when you press it in one direction it opens. When you press it in the other direction it closes, and when you let off it returns to center. And this uh, switch that I'm building is going to have two momentary switches that are push button that could actually be pushed at the same time. So since this creates an issue that I'm not sure if it would be a problem or not, I decided to add in a safety circuit by adding in two additional relays. So for this reason, we end up with 4 relays. It does make the wiring a little bit more complex, but if you follow along with the schematic, I'm sure that you can be successful in making this work. We're going to start off, I'm going to bring the mouse cursor down to the bottom of the screen. Hopefully you can see it lighten up down there. We're going to move over to the left side of the bottom of the screen, and you'll notice we have our battery. Now I chose to supply power to my circuit directly from the battery. If you so choose, you can do that, or you can tap in after the ignition switch so that when the ignition switch is off, that circuit is dead. I chose to go straight to the battery rather than monkey around with the wires that are at the ignition, which, not being familiar with the wiring schematic of the tractor, I would have to go into that wiring schematic and figure out which wire to hook to and where, that would cause the least amount of problem in the future. And any time that you splice into a wire, you're creating a potential hazard for failure. You're introducing moisture that can be a problem. You know, a number of things can happen. So I just stayed away from doing that. Hooked straight to the battery. You can do what you want to do. So back looking at the battery, let's first look at the negative side of the battery, or the ground terminal. We see on the battery it's marked NEG for negative, and we have a white dotted line connected to it. This white dotted line is going to symbolize the ground of our circuit. So if we follow that white dotted line down to the left and down to the bottom of the screen and over to the right, we'll notice that that negative ground wire is connected to the third function valve, the valve itself that controls the flow of the hydraulic fluid. This is the valve that your hydraulic lines are hooked into. So basically what we're doing is we're symbolizing here that we have grounded the third function valve. You can run a wire from the third function valve ground to the battery ground. You can run a wire from the third function valve to a chassis ground on a piece of metal somewhere on the tractor. Whatever suits your needs best, you can do that. I chose to run mine all the way back to the battery. Going back to the battery, back to the negative terminal, if we travel up, we'll notice a white dotted line traveling up and across the page, and we can see that it connects to the relays at terminal number 86. If you look at the relay on the back side, you'll notice embossed in the plastic is the terminal identification numbers. We have a ground hooked to terminal number 86 on all 4 relays. You can, if you follow this white dotted line, you'll see that it's joined together. All of the 86 terminals are joined together. And that's something that is going to be consistent. So when you set your relays side by side and screw them down, you can take those wire leads that are coming off terminal number 86, wire nut them all together with an additional wire, and run that wire back to the negative ground or ground it to the chassis ground. Anywhere on the metal chassis should give you sufficient ground. So we want to take note too what we're doing with these 4 relays, what is consistently the same, so that we can pre-wire them all together when we bolt them all down on whatever mounting bracket you're going to mount them to. If you watch in my video, I created a small mounting bracket, bolted these relays down to that bracket side by side. I took the wire that ran from terminal 86 on every relay, tied it together to an additional wire, and ran it back to the battery negative. Let's go back to the battery and look at the positive side of the battery. Now, coming out of the positive side of the battery, the first thing you'll see is I've got 2 fuses. I've got 2 separate wires coming off the positive side of the battery. You can notice this by the green dotted line. The bottom fuse is a smaller fuse. It's about 5 amps if memory serves me correctly. And this part of this circuit is going to be for the control amperage. The control amperage of this circuit should be relatively low because there are switches that are mounted up on the loader control valve are low amperage switches. They're not strong enough amperage to actually pull the third function valve in on their own, which is why we're going to use relays to do that. So we're going through two different fuses. The bottom small circuit fuse is for the control circuit. The top larger fuse, which is, I think, the stock fuse that came in it, is still in there, and it came with a 30 amp fuse. It's still got the 30 in there, but it probably doesn't need to be that large. I may change that to a 10 amp at some point and see if that will hold. I couldn't find any information as to how many amps that third function valve actually draws, so I'm just taking a guess. Now this larger circuit fuse that I have here on the top, what that circuit is doing is it's actually supplying the power for the third function valve. So when you use the amperage coming through the lower fuse, the smaller fuse, to turn on the relays, once the relays are turned on, they're not using this electricity that's coming through this small fuse. They're now using the electricity that's coming through this larger fuse to actually turn that third function valve on and allow the hydraulic fluid to travel to whatever implement we're trying to power with hydraulic fluid. Let's drop down to the smaller fuse and follow its trail. You'll notice that the green dotted line travels to a switch, and it's labeled switch at operator station. In my video, you'll see where I install a switch at the operator station so that I can turn this circuit on and off since it's not connected in with the ignition switch. This way I can flip the switch off, and if any kids climb up on the tractor and start pushing the button on the loader control arm, it won't do anything. It won't run the battery down, it won't do anything. Now this particular switch that I bought had 3 terminals. One terminal was the hot in, which is this first terminal that this green wire is getting to. The other terminal was the load out terminal. That's this other circular terminal that the green wire travels from. A third terminal was a ground terminal. The ground terminal was put on the switch because the switch has a light built into it. I did not want that light coming on because it had the potential of running the battery down. So I did not hook up the ground terminal. We left that disconnected. Let's follow the green dotted line from our low amperage circuit and see where it goes. We can see it travels across to the right hand side of the screen, up to the top of the screen, and then back over to about the middle of the screen. And the first place it stops is it goes up to a switch. This switch is a momentary switch. This is one of the switches that's located on the loader control lever. The cue ball that we drilled out and installed the switch in to control our 4-in-1 bucket or grapple or whatever we're going to put on the front of the tractor, that is this switch. There's 2 of them. This is the first one. So that green wire hooks in to one side of that switch. Additionally, the green wire hooks into the other switch on that same side of that other switch. It really doesn't make a difference which side you put it on. But that green wire has to hook into one side of one switch and one side of the other switch. Now, if we look at the switch that's on the left top of the page, and the cursor is traveling around those switches now. Let's look at what's going to happen. We've got electricity running up this green dotted line to the switch. When we press this switch down, and this black line right here represents the button that we're going to press down. When we press it down, we can see that it's going to hinge down and connect to this black circle. That's going to make electricity flow through the switch and down this white dotted line. This white dotted line is nothing but a wire. The wire that I ran up to these two switches was just basically an extension cord. You'll see that in the video. And inside that extension cord was a green wire, a black wire, and a white wire. So we run out of this white wire. We took the white wire and that extension cord and we hooked it to one side of the switch. We took the black wire and that extension cord and we hooked it to the one side of the other switch. Now when we push the first button down, electricity flows through and down this white dotted line, which is that white wire. It travels all the way down, and in the video you'll see it goes to the front of the tractor where we have 4 relays. Now at those 4 relays, what we've done is we have taken the wire that runs off relay number 1 at terminal 30. We've tied it to that white wire. We've also gone to relay number 2 and took the wire that's connected to terminal number 85 and we've connected it to that white wire. So underneath that white wire, if we wire nut them together, we'd have 3 wires underneath that wire nut. We'd have a wire from terminal number 30 on relay number 1, a wire from terminal number 85, all tied with this white wire that runs up to the switch from the loader control lever. Let's look at the second switch on the loader control lever at the top of the screen on the right hand side. We'll circle in this with our mouse cursor now. When we press that down, this black lever goes down and closes against this round circle. This causes electricity to run over and travel down that black wire. When that black wire gets down to the front of the tractor, where the relays are at, it ties to the wire that comes from relay number 1, terminal 85. It also ties to terminal number 30 on relay number 2. So when we get to the front of the tractor and we find relay number 1 and relay number 2, we need to take the wire that runs out of terminal 85 on relay number 1 and the wire that comes out of terminal 30 on relay number 2 and tie it to the black wire that runs up to the loader control valve. To the loader control button at the loader control valve. So when we press that button down, and close it, electricity is going to run down that wire, and it's going to send electricity into terminal 85. It's also going to send electricity down and into terminal number 30 on relay number 2. Now let's look at what else we need to pre-wire when we bolt our 4 relays down. If we look at terminal 87A on relay number 1, we can see that we've got a yellow dotted line that travels down and over and connects to terminal number 85 on relay number 3. So this means that we need to take the wire that's running out of terminal 87A on relay number 1 and connect it to the wire that's coming out of terminal 85 on relay number 3. Those are the only 2 wires that are connected together from those 2 points. You can wire nut them together, you can solder them together, however you see fit to connect them. Connect those 2 wires together and tape them up so that water can't get to them. Let's head over to relay number 2. On relay number 2, we can see that terminal 87A is connected to relay number 4 at terminal 85. So there again, on relay number 4, we're going to take the wire from terminal 85. We're going to connect it at this connection point, which is connected to terminal 87A from relay number 2. Those are the only 2 that are connected between these 2 relays. Relay 2 and relay 4 are connected 87A to 85. If you noticed right above relay number 3 at terminal 87A, we've got a black line drawn. This is to symbolize that this wire from 87A is not connected right here. On relay number 4, we have a black line going across the top of terminal 87A. This is to symbolize that this wire from relay number 2, 87A, is not connected to either one of these 2 terminals. It simply goes past there and is only connected to terminal 85 on relay number 4. Now let's see what we're doing with relay number 3. From relay number 3, we want to locate the wire that's labeled 87B. It's symbolized by this blue dotted line. So we need to run a wire from 87B back up to our 3rd function valve. Now, in the video, you'll see where I ran the extension cord from where the battery box on the tractor at the front of the tractor is located and the bank of relays is located, back up to where the third function valve is located, where the loader control is. And inside that wire was a white, a black, and a green. The green wire we used as the ground. We came out of the third function valve down at the bottom right hand side, and we used that green wire as the ground wire. The white and the black wire we used to connect to terminal 87B. So this blue dotted line that's connected to 87B on relay number 3, and this blue dotted line that's connected to terminal 87B on relay number 4, those wires are actually not blue. I simply made them blue in this diagram so that they would be different. But actually, since we're using that orange extension cord, those two wires are black and white. I didn't want them to get confused with the other black and white wires on here, so I simply made them blue. So one of those wires will run to relay number 3 at terminal 87B. You can't see the B in this diagram because it's covered up by this blue dot. On relay number 4, terminal 87B is connected to the black wire, and it runs back to third function valve and is connected in the other side of the third function valve. If you look inside the third function valve, you'll see that there's 3 places in there where you can hook wires to. One is the negative ground, and you've seen that in the picture that we posted with that part of the video. And then there's 2 positive connections. One opens the third function valve in one direction, one opens the third function valve in the opposite direction. That's what we're connecting here. Well, that's about it. I think if you follow this schematic along, you shouldn't have any problems making your system work. I'm not going to get into how the system works and how the safety part of it works. You'll just have to trust me that if you press both of these buttons on the loader down at the same time, it will render relays 3 and 4 non-functional. So it cannot send power to both sides of the third function valve at the same time. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope this was more than clear than mud. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. I'll be happy to answer any questions about this wire diagram that I possibly can. You may have to rewind the video and watch it again. You may have to watch it several times to fully grasp what we're doing here and why, if you want to know why we've wired it the way we have to keep the third function valve from opening in 2 different directions at the same time. Thanks for watching. I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel and liking my video.
Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.